How about the Gospel of Mark in the 14th chapter? I'll try not to interrupt myself again. Page 1578, we're going to look at the first 11 verses from that text. Mark 14, 1 through 11. Did you hear about the antique dealer who was strolling through town, and he passed in front of another antique shop, and he saw in the doorway there this scrawny, mangy old cat was drinking milk out of a saucer. And he didn't think much of the cat, but he noticed the saucer, and he realized that saucer was a valuable antique, worth thousands of dollars. And he couldn't believe it, and so he had an idea. He went inside and he said, "Hey, I'd like to buy your cat." The dealer said, "No, cat's not for sale." He said, "Well, that's too bad." He said, "I really need a cat around the house to get mice and maybe give me a little company." And he said, "Would you take $200 for the cat?" The guy said, "Sold." The guy who bought the cat says, "Well, for $200, any chance you'd throw in that saucer? Because I would, the cat's used to it, and that would save me getting another dish." And the dealer says, "No way, buddy. That's my lucky cat. This week I've sold 68 cats. It's my lucky saucer." I just screwed the joke up. It's a lucky saucer. So when you tell that to your friends and loved ones, don't mess it up. Oh, what a shame to screw up a joke. Let's hope I get the rest of the sermon right. Okay. I want to read with you a text about something that is very valuable that was given to the Lord. Mark 14, the first verse. And just a little bit of context. This is a different anointing of Jesus than what we read earlier. What we read earlier was a different place, a different time. This is a different setting. It's the last week of Jesus' life. Literally, within 3 days, this text tells us that Jesus will be on the cross. And somebody throws him a dinner in his honor. We know that individual's name was Simon the leper versus the Simon the Pharisee of the previous text we read. We know from the other Gospels that Simon's there, he has guests. Among those guests are Jesus, his disciples. We also know from the other Gospels that Martha is serving. This lady we're going to read of, is Mary. Lazarus is there. You remember Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, the brothers and sisters that were close to Jesus? They're there. So let's read this text. It says, "The Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread were only 2 days away. And the chief priests and teachers of the law were looking for some sly way to arrest Jesus and kill him. But not during the feast, they said, or the people may riot. While he was in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of a man known as Simon the leper, a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. She broke the jar, poured the perfume on his head. Some of those present were saying indignantly to one another, 'Why this waste of perfume? It could have been sold for more than a year's wages and the money given to the poor.' And they rebuked her harshly. 'Leave her alone,' said Jesus. 'Why are you bothering her? She's done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, and you can help them anytime you want. But you will not always have me. She did what she could. She poured perfume on my body beforehand to prepare for my burial. I tell you the truth, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her.' Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray Jesus to them. They were delighted to hear this and promised to give him money. So he watched for an opportunity to hand him over." A little bit of background on this passage. This nard, what perfume is made out of. It comes from a spike that's on a tree that's found in northern India. And it had been processed to the place that it made it into a liquid form, which means it's valuable. It's valuable to get that processed, and somehow it had to get from India here. And so there's no mystery why this is valuable, and it's so valuable, they know it's worth more than a year's wages, right? That's a lot of money. I don't care how much you make. The smell of this is usually used in very small quantities, and the smell of this being put on Jesus, it would have filled the room. You would have known it happened even if you didn't see it happen. It just would have overwhelmed that place where they are. And what we're not told in this text, according to the teaching of the rabbis, this was not to be used for welcoming guests, and it was not to be used to put in water to wash somebody's feet, because in their opinions, that would be a waste. It was too valuable to be used for those purposes. And so sometimes, rather than just washing somebody's feet, you might put a little perfume in the water, and just makes everybody's evening go better. That's a little bit about nard. How about the woman is obviously Mary. We know that from the other Gospels. She was close friends with Jesus, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. You remember? He often stayed with them. Lazarus died, and he raised him from the dead. Mary is the one we read of who listened to Jesus, right? Not that Martha's service wasn't valuable, but she was listening. When the time for listening was there, she was listening. And we know that multiple times Jesus had said he was going to Jerusalem, he was going to be betrayed, and he was going to be killed. My guess is Mary got it. Mary got it. She listened. She loved him, and she paid attention to what he said, and she knows that he's not long for this world according to his own word. One other item of background, in verses 10 and 11, clearly this is the final straw for Judas, right? He can't take it anymore. And so this is what gives him the opportunity to give the chief priests and the teachers of the law their chance to get Jesus before the Passover. They're thinking we're going to do it later, but Judas comes along with an open door, and it just pushes him over the edge. The irony is this, right? He sees the value of the nard, but he doesn't see the value of Jesus. That's a whole other sermon for some other day. So what do we do with this text? Beyond it, the fact that it explains why Jesus was crucified before the Passover and not after, and beyond the fact that it's a very moving tribute, right? What do we do with it beyond what it says, she's done a beautiful thing to me, Jesus says? Well, let me suggest a couple of things. First of all, part of what we learn from this is it's not our role to critique other people's sacrifice and service to Christ. It's not our role. Whatever somebody else does in sacrifice and service to Christ, that's theirs. It's not ours to critique that. This perfume gets poured out, and the people are indignant, right? They're saying, that's a waste of money. And they rebuke her. And so it's not like you just have some people there just shaking their head, like, little mumbles. No, this is out loud stuff. They're indignant. This violates the teaching of the rabbis, right? She shouldn't have been using that. Even if she used it, she shouldn't have been using that on Jesus. It shouldn't have been involved in anything. They can't believe that somebody would take this much money, something this valuable, and do this with it. And they tell her about it. Boy, they come down on her. That's the force of the language. And it's so bad, Jesus says, hey, leave her alone. Why are you hassling her? Knock it off. So what if she gave and sacrificed a lot? Right? That's the force of Jesus' words. So what? What's it to you? He talks about time. He says down the road, wherever the gospel's preached, throughout the whole world, he said this is going to be told in memory of her. Let time evaluate her sacrifice, her service, than what she's done. Let time take care of it. Not so many words. Jesus tells them to shut up. Just shut up. Time will prove what you have no idea of knowing today. Your opinion really doesn't matter. And their phrase, right? Why this waste? What a waste of perfume. You know, occasionally in this world, there are people that do things that other people look at and they go, what a waste. What a waste. And I've done it. I think Michael Jackson's career was a waste of an incredible talent and an incredible voice. What that man could have done for God musically would have been amazing. You see, I'm with the other people in the room right now. I look at it, I go, what a waste. But you know what? You don't care, and nobody else cares what I think of Michael Jackson. I don't have to critique Michael Jackson. It's not my place. So it doesn't matter what I think. There are people, most of you know who I mean when I say Mother Teresa. They think she wasted her life in the slums of Calcutta ministering to people. She could have been a nun almost anywhere she wanted. But she stayed there in a place nobody else wanted to be. Because that's where she believed God wanted her. And there's an awful lot of people in the world look down on her and think of that as a wasted life. Well, you know what? Time will tell. Time will tell. Mary lived with the loss of this money. She lived with what this cost her. She didn't ask anybody else to. Right? She was willing. She didn't ask anybody else in that room. She did it herself. She was willing to pay that price, to pour it out. It was what she believed God wanted her to do, and she did it. And what else anybody else thought of it is really none of their business. And it doesn't need said, even if it's thought. Do you ever have trouble not saying what you think? Yeah. And even if everybody in the room couldn't believe it, it did need to be said. It's her act. It's her perfume. It's her money. And if she wants to pour it out on God, so be it. So Jesus cuts off their critiques. He says something else that you got to love. He says, the poor you always have with you. You can help them anytime you want. Translation, if you think this money should have been given to the poor, why don't you take a year's worth of your wages and you give it? That's his point. You can do that. You know what? You can pour out a year's wages on the poor anytime you feel like. Go ahead and take your stuff and do it. Stop telling her what she should do with her stuff. You got to love that. You just got to love it. And, Judas, he can't handle this. He just can't handle it. What else do we do with this? Well, I think the other thing we walk away with is that we ought to do and give what God leads us to do and give without telling others what they should do. All right, so the first part is the group of people that witnesses this act. The second part of this is Mary herself, what she does. Mary acts on her own. She does what she could when she could. That's what Jesus says in verse 7. He says, verse 8. She did what she could. Right? She did it. The disciples, what are they doing? For the last 3 years, they've been learning. What's Martha been doing? Well, we know from other passages, Martha's expertise was serving. She served people, right? She took care of the details. And in the other Gospels, even this night, she's serving. Lazarus is joining the group. She's helping to serve the meal. The disciples are learning. Martha's serving. The rulers, the chief priests, they're rejecting Jesus, right? They're putting him off. What's Mary doing? She's honoring him. She's honoring him. And I think she knows she's running out of time and opportunity to bless her Lord. She's running out of time and opportunity to bless the man that raised her brother, that introduced her to who God is. She's running out of time and opportunity to bless the Messiah. He's not going to be there very much longer. And she's going to do what she can. And so she's going to offer what she has. And that's exactly what she's doing. And she's doing it on her own. And she's not telling anybody else what they're supposed to do. I love the fact that she does not organize a perfume ministry for other people to join. She doesn't create a line of "Give your nard to Jesus" t-shirts. Or "I gave my nard to Jesus" bumper stickers. She just does it. Do you ever get sick and tired of somebody else telling you what you should do for God? Now, we should do something for God. And I'm not criticizing other people's ministries. What I'm saying is, let's be careful that we don't tell other people what they should be doing. We're not critiquing their service, and we're not telling them that they should do what we do. So Mary does this. She does it on her own. She's not asking for help. She's not asking for reimbursement. None of it. She does it. Because this is what she in her heart wants to do to bless the Lord. And so your calling, my calling, our service, our opportunities, they're ours. God may lead other people to be involved, right? He might lead other participants to be involved, and that's a good thing. But isn't that up to God? Isn't that up to God? So we can talk about what we're doing, but we leave it up to God for who He brings along. And we take guilt and we shove it off the table. There is no shortage of people talking today. You realize we have so much talk today. It's unbelievable. So many people are telling so many other people what we ought to do. And I want to add my voice to it and say, we probably ought to just shut up. My radar goes on when I hear somebody on a radio or some other outlet say what the church ought to be doing. Boom, I go off. I just shut it off. Because if it isn't from here, I don't hear it. I hear people saying what preachers ought to be preaching about, and if it's not what Paul said to Timothy, preach the word, I don't want to hear it. We don't exist to do causes. We exist for the glory of God and to take the gospel to the world. That's scriptural. And I love the fact that Mary goes into the room and does what she believes is in her heart, what she should do to bless the Lord. And if somebody else wants to come along, great. But that's what she does. We need to be very careful about what I call a controlling spirit. Right? Here's the disciples. They want to control her. They want to tell her what she should and shouldn't have done. Judas wants to control Jesus. He shouldn't be justifying this pouring out of money. Something needs to be done about him. The chief priests and the teachers of the law, they want to control Jesus as well. They want to get rid of him. They're looking for a way to cancel him. And this controlling spirit, it leads to at least two things. One, it leads to hypocrisy. It won't be long until we're caught in hypocrisy. Because we're controlling other people, we're telling them what to do. It won't be long until we do something that is hypocritical and will be called for it. Right? This night is I'm assuming it's a night, maybe it was during the day, is a waste of money, they say. And Judas is among them. And yet in Matthew, we're told Judas goes from here. And what does he do before the chief priest? He asks for money. You want to talk about a waste of money? 30 pieces of silver for the life of Christ. Oh my goodness. How pathetic is that? See, it's hypocritical for Judas to sit there and wag his head and then to go and betray the Messiah for a wee little bit of money. He doesn't understand value one bit. The other thing that happens is what we're living with today. It's the cancel culture. Oh, by the way, no, I'll save that. I don't need to make that comment. The cancel culture, right? Where we need to get rid of those that we cannot control. We need to get rid of those who don't agree with us. And so the chief priests and teachers of the law, they can't control Jesus. He doesn't agree with them. They're going to get rid of him. Judas can't control this flow of money. It's wrong. And so what does he do? He looks for a way to help them get rid of him. And when we live with a controlling spirit, it won't be long. We're going to be caught in our own hypocrisy. And the next thing you want to know is we're going to be starting to determine who needs to be gotten rid of. And if you think that is a comment on our contemporary culture, you are exactly right. It is. We're living it in our nation. Where freedom, we're not given freedom. And sometimes in the Christian community, we're not given freedom. To do what God has called us to do without comment from others, and let somebody else do what God's called them to do without our critiquing it. Lastly, and I think this is the most important of all, is this question. Is Jesus more valuable to us than things? See, when Mary pours this out, what is she saying? He is more valuable to me than a year's wages. He is more valuable to me than this perfume that takes awful lot of time to get made and to get here, which most people are holding on to. It's a year's worth of income. This is hugely valuable. And she's saying he is more important than these things. Can you imagine if somebody somewhere had Mary's broken alabaster jar, what it would be worth? My goodness. Lloyd's of London would love to auction that thing off. We would think it's so valuable. What does Mary think of it? Pour it out. He's more valuable than that. So I have to ask myself, is God more valuable to me than a year's wages? Is he more valuable maybe than a lifetime's wages? Is he more valuable to us than some prized possession? Is there something that we just would have trouble letting go of? Maybe it's a person. Like Abraham. When God says, will you sacrifice him to me? Will you pour him out on an altar? Whew. Is God more valuable to us than our children, our relationships? Is God more valuable to us than maybe some hope or dream? Mary did what she could, right? That's what she had. I don't know that much about these people's life. I know somehow or another she managed to accumulate enough to get this perfume. How it happened. Maybe it was a gift. I don't know. But its value compared to God was very, very little. It was used as something to bless him, to pour out her gratitude upon him, to honor him. And so she chooses a dinner which is given in honor of Jesus, to do an act of honor for him, and she gets critiqued for it while she's silent about it. She just wants to do it. So I start to sort through my life and my heart, and you have to do the same thing. Is Jesus more valuable to us than things? Her action was beyond the value of the perfume, right? The surrender, the sacrifice, it was beyond the value of the perfume, worth far more than a year's wages. So we ask ourselves, what is there that I would sacrifice to God? What is there that I would just pour it out and let it go? What is there that I would want to? Right? What is there that I would want to? Jesus never asked this. So be careful that you read this text and say, well, Jesus is asking you to pour out, everything, all you've got, your stuff. No. Mary did it. She did it because she was led to do it. She didn't do it because God demanded it. And its value was in its act, was in its willing sacrifice. And so, what is there that I would want to sacrifice to him? I read this passage and say, what percentage of my income would I give if there wasn't a thing in the Bible called a tithe? Would I give 10%? That's the first time I've ever asked this question after going through this text. What would I do if I didn't have a number? We like a number, don't we? We like to know where the line is. A lot of us, we don't have trouble giving what's asked. We are willing to comply, right? So we like the Ten Commandments. We like rules. They give us the curbs in which to run in. But what if there are no curbs? What if it comes down to a willingness and a want to and a desire to honor God without anything being asked? What would I be willing to give, or to give up, or to surrender, or to sacrifice? A little heart-searching, isn't it? I want to remind us as we close, when we're given a glimpse through John's visions that were given to him, when he saw in the inner recesses of heaven, and when he sees the throne, when he sees the people, what's of value? It's God. It's Christ. Right? It's the Lamb who's found worthy.